Klay Thompson is officially a member of the Miami Heat. And honestly, this is much bigger than just another free agent signing. Because Klay didn't come to Miami simply because the Heat needed another shooter. He came to Miami because he believes he still has something left to prove. And that could make this one of the most fascinating moves of the entire NBA offseason. After being bought out by the Dallas Mavericks, Thompson cleared waivers and signed a 2-year, $11.5 million deal with Miami. Think about that for a second. A 4-time NBA champion, a 5-time All-Star, one of the greatest three-point shooters in NBA history, a player who has already experienced almost everything the NBA can offer. And now, at 36 years old, Klay is starting another chapter. But this time, the goal is very clear. He wants another championship. And Miami may have given him the perfect opportunity. Because this isn't the same Heat team that missed the playoffs last season. Miami completely changed the direction of the franchise. The biggest move, of course, was bringing in Giannis Antetokounmpo. And now, the Heat have added Klay Thompson to that equation. Suddenly, Miami has a completely different identity. You have Giannis attacking the basket. You have Bam Adebayo controlling the middle of the floor. You have Andrew Wiggins providing athleticism and perimeter defense. And now you have Klay Thompson standing behind the three-point line. That combination is what makes this move so interesting. Because Klay doesn't have to be the player he was in Golden State. He doesn't have to score 25 points every night. He doesn't have to create his own shot. He doesn't even have to be the second option. Miami doesn't need that version of Klay. They need the version that can punish a defense when it makes one mistake. And that's exactly where Giannis changes everything. Imagine the defense trying to stop Giannis as he attacks the paint. Two defenders collapse. The help comes from the corner. And suddenly Klay Thompson is standing completely open. That is the kind of situation Miami wants to create. And Klay knows exactly how to play that game. For his career, Thompson has made 40.9% of his three-point attempts. He entered Miami fourth all-time and made three-pointers with 2,899. Even during his final season in Dallas, when his overall production dropped significantly, he still made 202 three-pointers. So the shooting hasn't disappeared. The question is whether Miami can put him in situations where his shooting matters the most. And that's where Erik Spoelstra becomes extremely important. Because Spoelstra doesn't need Klay to become something he's not. He can use him as a movement shooter. He can run him through screens. He can put him in the corner. He can use him as a decoy. And he can allow Giannis and Bam to create the majority of the pressure. That could make Klay much more dangerous than his recent numbers suggest. Because let's be honest, Klay's last season wasn't pretty. He averaged just 11.7 points per game with Dallas. That was the lowest scoring average of his career. He shot 38.3% from three. Those numbers are a long way from the Klay Thompson fans remember from Golden State. But that's also why Miami is such an interesting destination. The Heat aren't asking Klay to carry the franchise. They're asking him to complement it. And that is a completely different challenge. In Dallas, the situation around Klay became increasingly difficult. The Mavericks finished 26-56 last season. The roster that Klay originally imagined playing with looked completely different by the time the season ended. Luka Doncic was gone. Kyrie Irving dealt with a major injury. And Dallas was no longer in the position to give Klay the championship opportunity he wanted. So Klay asked for a buyout. And that decision tells us everything about where his priorities are right now. Money wasn't the most important thing. Winning was. Klay reportedly left money on the table in order to pursue another championship opportunity. And Miami gave him exactly that. But there is another part of this story that makes the move even more interesting. Klay is returning to a championship environment. He's joining an organization that has a reputation for demanding discipline, conditioning, and accountability. And that matters. Because at this stage of his career, Klay can't rely on athleticism the way he once did. He has to rely on intelligence, timing, positioning, shot selection, and experience. Those are things Miami can still use. And then there's the emotional side of the story. Klay spent the majority of his career with Golden State. He won 4 championships there. He became one of the most recognizable shooters in NBA history. But his final years with the Warriors ended with a painful reality. The relationship had changed. The player had changed. And eventually, Klay moved to Dallas looking for a new beginning. That beginning didn't become what he wanted. Now Miami's giving him another one. And this one feels different. Because Klay isn't joining a rebuilding team. He's joining a team that already has a superstar. He's joining a team that has championship expectations. And he's joining a team that desperately needs what he does best. Shooting, spacing, experience, and big game confidence. There's also another familiar face waiting for him in Miami, Andrew Wiggins. The two were teammates in Golden State during one of the most successful periods of the Warriors dynasty. Now they're getting another chance to chase a championship together. But this time, the centerpiece is different. It's Giannis. And that could completely change the way Klay's game is viewed. Think about the pressure on a defense. If you stay home on Klay, Giannis can attack. If you collapse on Giannis, Klay gets an open 3. If you focus on Bam, another shooter can get space. That is the blueprint. And if it works, Miami could become extremely difficult to defend. But there is one major question. Can Klay still perform when the stakes become high? Because that's ultimately why Miami signed him. Not for November, not for January, not for regular season highlights. They signed Klay because they believe he can help them in April, May, and potentially June. And that's where his experience becomes valuable. Klay has been through the biggest games imaginable. He's played in the NBA Finals. He's hit enormous shots. He's defended elite players. He's played through pressure that most players never experience. You can't teach that. And Miami is betting that experience still has value, but let's not pretend there isn't risk. Klay is 36. His scoring has declined. His minutes have declined. And his defensive impact isn't what it was during his prime. So Miami isn't getting the 2016 version of Klay Thompson. They're getting an older, more specialized version. And maybe that's actually enough because the Heat don't need the old Klay. They need a new Klay. A Klay who understands exactly what his job is. A Klay who doesn't need 20 shots to impact the game. A Klay who can go 4 for 9 from 3 and completely change a playoff game. That player could still be extremely valuable. And that's why I think this move deserves more attention than it's getting. The Heat didn't just add a veteran. They added a player with a championship mentality to a team that is suddenly thinking about championships again. Klay himself has made it clear that the opportunity to compete for another title was a major reason he chose Miami. And that tells you what this next chapter is really about. Redemption. Not redemption because Klay failed, but redemption because the final chapter in Dallas didn't look anything like the story he wanted to write. Now he gets another chance. And this time, he has Giannis. He has Bam. He has Wiggins. He has Spoelstra. And he has an organization that expects to compete. So the question isn't whether Klay Thompson is still the player he was 8 years ago. He's not. The real question is much more interesting. Can the Miami Heat turn the version of Klay Thompson that exists today into a championship weapon? Because if the answer is yes, Miami may have just found one of the most valuable role players in the entire Eastern Conference. And if Klay finds even a small piece of the player he used to be when the playoffs arrive, the Heat could become a completely different problem. Because Giannis doesn't need another superstar. He needs spacing. Bam doesn't need another player demanding the ball. He needs someone who can punish defenses. And Miami doesn't need Klay to be the hero. They just need him to be ready when the moment arrives. And after everything Klay Thompson has been through, something tells me he's going to be very ready